The fine showed up in my mailbox the same day I signed payroll for 47 employees. Unauthorized home-based business activity $1,000 violation, the slip read in sharp bold letters. And just beneath it, a handwritten note in bubblegum pink ink, "You are in direct violation of Section 7B. Signed, of course, by Deborah Tills, HOA Vice President, reigning queen of petty power grabs, and the kind of woman who'd write up her own mother for a lawn gnome. I'm Nolan Jeffers. I run a remote cybersecurity firm out of my home office. We've got contracts with 3 hospitals, 2 school districts, and a nonprofit that feeds veterans. My team, scattered across the country except for the 5 who live right here in our community, and wouldn't you know it, 2 of them sit on the HOA board with Deborah. I spotted her the next morning as I was putting out the trash. She was doing her usual patrol in her beige Subaru, snapping photos of people's shutters like she worked for Architectural Digest. "Deborah," I called, waving the violation slip. "You got a minute?" She slowed to a halt, sunglasses perched on her forehead like a crown. "I do, Nolan, but if you're here to argue your violation, you'll need to file a formal appeal." "Appeal? You fine me for operating a business. I work from home, so does half the country." "You gonna fine every freelance graphic designer too? You run a business, Nolan. It's in the HOA bylaws. No business traffic, no employees, no deliveries." I laughed. "Deborah, who do you think writes the HOA's security protocols? Who fixed the board's hacked email accounts last February?" She stiffened. "That's irrelevant. Not to Marcus and Lynn," I said casually, naming the 2 board members who work for me. "Or to the HOA's treasurer who asked me last week to upgrade your firewall." Her mouth twitched. "They're volunteers. Your business is irrelevant to their board duties." "Except they're on my payroll." I held up a folder. "Want to see the W-2s, or should I show this to the rest of the neighborhood first?" Her lips pursed. "You think this is a game? No, I think you're trying to throw your weight around and just picked the wrong guy. I've got every communication, every payment, and every contract documented, including emails where you personally requested I review the HOA's network for free." Her face drained of color. "That's not legal, I know." She didn't respond, just hit the gas and drove off. Good. Because I wasn't stopping at talking. I'd had enough of her backyard dictatorship. And if she wanted this to be a legal fight, I had a folder full of receipts, a network of employees in her own camp, and a neighborhood that was about to learn exactly how deep her hypocrisy ran. 2 days after my run-in with Deborah, an envelope marked HOA Legal Compliance Committee appeared on my doorstep. Inside was a cease and desist letter typed in legalese so clumsy, it looked like someone had Googled how to sound like a lawyer and copied the first template they found. It accused me of willfully undermining the authority of the HOA board through undue influence and coercive employment practices. Apparently, paying people a fair wage to do cybersecurity work from their own homes now constituted coercion. I didn't respond. Not to them, anyway. Instead, I made a call to Brianna Keats, a real attorney. Former assistant district attorney turned homeowner rights bulldog. She'd helped a friend of mine dismantle a condo HOA in Scottsdale after they tried to seize his property over a satellite dish. The woman had a memory like a steel trap and an appetite for blood if you put HOA abuse in the subject line. She answered on the second ring. "Nolan, I was wondering when you'd call. You've heard," I read the letter. "Deborah sent it to one of my clients by mistake. She tried copy-pasting your name into a recycled template and forgot to change the email address. Classic." I pressed a hand to my forehead. "Of course she did. She's bluffing. But if she escalates, I'm ready. In the meantime, get me their bylaws, meeting minutes, and any communications about your business." "Already pulled. I also have a digital backup of their server logs." Brianna paused. "Wait, you have access to their logs? They never changed the admin credentials after I finished their network audit. Rookie move." "You're sitting on a gold mine," she said. "Find anything interesting?" "Oh yeah," I leaned back in my chair. I found a series of deleted emails between Deborah and a company called Faircross Holdings. They've been quietly trying to buy up homes in the neighborhood cheap, then flip them into rentals. HOA's been fining select owners into desperation, then offering them assistance through a preferred buyer. Guess who runs Faircross? Don't say Deborah. No, but her brother does. I traced the LLC registration. She's laundering the whole thing through him. I heard Brianna exhale. This is criminal. Think we can prove it? Absolutely. But we need more than circumstantial tech evidence. Get me testimony. People who were fined, pressured, and then approached by this buyer. You get me 3 homeowners, I'll get you a state investigator. That night, I went door to door. Not with pamphlets or speeches, just conversations, quiet ones. I started with Mr. Hargrave, a widower who'd been fined for having an unapproved wheelchair ramp last fall. He'd sold his house a month later to Faircross Holdings, under pressure. They told me I was violating code, he said, eyes narrowing. Said I'd be sued for non-compliance. Then some guy called and offered to buy the place in cash, no inspections. I was desperate. I didn't know it was connected. It was, I said. And you're not the only one. By the end of the week, I had 5 affidavits. Each homeowner had a similar story, citation, threat, then a lowball offer from Faircross. Deborah had been careful but not perfect. One email I found in the server logs referred to a priority list of non-compliant owners for transition. Another mentioned incentivizing turnover through targeted enforcement. Brianna took the documents straight to the county district attorney's office. Within 48 hours, a formal complaint had been filed with the State Department of Consumer Protection. Deborah didn't know it yet, but she was being investigated for racketeering under the state's Corrupt Practices Statute. Meanwhile, she doubled down. A motion was introduced at the next HOA meeting to remove me from the neighborhood's Residential Integrity Committee, a group I'd volunteered on for years. The meeting was public, so I showed up with a projector, 3 poster boards, and a very calm tone. Before we vote, I said, I'd like to show a few internal documents. Deborah's jaw clenched the moment the projector flickered to life. Slide 1. The list of homeowners marked for transition. Slide 2. A payment log showing a transfer from Faircross Holdings to the HOA's discretionary fund labeled Community Improvement Donation. The date matched the week Hargrave's house was bought. Slide 3, an email from Deborah to her brother celebrating the uptick in compliance revenue. The room went silent. I didn't authorize those slides, Deborah said, her voice high and tight. They're public record now, I said. And I've already submitted them to the state. One of the board members, David, a former Marine who ran his own car detailing business, stood up. I moved to suspend Vice President Tills pending legal review. Seconded, came a voice from the back. The vote passed unanimously. Deborah stormed out, muttering threats about defamation lawsuits and smear campaigns. No one followed her. Brianna called me later that night. She's in deep. Investigators are pulling financials now. If she moved HOA funds into anything personal, she's toast. She did, I said. I found tax records from last year. She claimed a consulting fee from Faircross on her personal return. You're kidding. Filed under Community Relations Services, she didn't even try to hide it. The next morning, a sheriff's cruiser pulled into the neighborhood. I watched from my porch as 2 plainclothes investigators walked up to Deborah's front door with a warrant. She answered in a robe, hair in curlers, and tried to slam the door. They stopped it with a foot. Half the neighborhood was watching. Within an hour, her desktop tower, 3 boxes of documents, and a personal laptop were loaded into evidence bags. Later that week, the board appointed an interim president, Lynn, one of my employees. She immediately proposed an emergency audit of all HOA finances. The motion passed without objection. I didn't celebrate. Not yet. There were still bridges to rebuild, people to reassure, and legal processes to see through. But for the first time in months, the air felt lighter. When I got home that night, there was a handwritten note taped to my door. It said, "Thank you for fighting back," no signature, just clean block letters. But I didn't need one. The message was clear. The neighborhood wasn't scared anymore. 3 weeks after Deborah's front door was forced open by state investigators, a letter arrived from the district attorney's office. It wasn't addressed to me, but to the entire neighborhood, an official notice of pending charges against several HOA board members for conspiracy to commit fraud, misuse of community funds, and violation of state housing codes. The envelope included a request for residents to attend a public town hall at the county civic center, where the DA would present preliminary findings. I knew it wouldn't just be about Deborah. The investigation had grown teeth. That same day, I got a call from Marcus, one of my senior network analysts and a board member who'd quietly stepped down after the scandal began to unfold. "I think you better see this," he said. I was reviewing archived security footage for that week. The financial records went missing from the HOA office. "You found something?" "Yeah, come by the office, bring Brianna." By dusk, we were crowded around a grainy monitor in the back of Marcus's garage. He hit play. The footage showed a man entering the HOA's storage unit, which was supposed to be accessible only to the board president and treasurer. But this wasn't either of them. It was the HOA's maintenance contractor, Donnie Telford. A guy who everyone had assumed was harmless, more interested in replacing light bulbs than playing errand boy for a criminal ring. We watched him pry open a locked cabinet with a crowbar, stuff 2 bankers' boxes into his truck, and drive off at 2 in the morning. Brianna leaned forward. "What's his connection to Deborah?" Marcus clicked a file open on his laptop. "He's listed as a subcontractor, but he's also her ex-brother-in-law." I pulled his payment history. "He's been paid through the HOA's discretionary fund every month for the last year, but there's no record of completed work, not even a receipt." "He's a ghost vendor," Brianna muttered. "They were using him to siphon money." We brought the footage to the DA's office the next morning. Within 48 hours, Donnie had been picked up for questioning. His truck was impounded. The boxes were recovered, one full of financial statements, the other loaded with uncashed checks made out to Faircross Holdings. Meanwhile, the neighborhood was beginning to shift. With Deborah suspended, her allies scattered, and the board under restructuring, residents started stepping forward with stories they'd kept quiet for too long. An elderly couple, the Gaineses, revealed they were billed $600 for unauthorized porch furniture that had belonged to the previous owners. A single mother named Tasha had been fined repeatedly for excessive vehicle presence, even though she worked night shifts as a nurse and only parked on her own property. I recorded each testimony and handed them off to Brianna, who compiled them into a growing case file. It wasn't just about Deborah anymore. This was about a culture of intimidation that had taken root under her leadership and the ecosystem of enablers who let it fester. At the town hall, the civic center was packed. Over 100 residents sat shoulder to shoulder, murmuring anxiously as the district attorney stepped up to the podium. She was a serious woman in a slate gray blazer, not one for theatrics. But when she spoke, the room fell silent. "Our office has completed the preliminary phase of our investigation into the Willow Creek HOA. We have identified probable cause to pursue charges against Deborah Tills, Donnie Telford, and 2 additional board members for racketeering, fraudulent misrepresentation, and willful neglect of fiduciary duty." Gasps rippled through the room. The HOA operated a shell system to enrich themselves through targeted enforcement, manipulated citations, and forced property sales. These actions were not only unethical, they were criminal. "We are moving forward with indictments." From the back row, someone stood up. It was David, the former Marine who'd motioned to suspend Deborah weeks earlier. "What does this mean for us legally? Are our fines still valid, our dues?" The DA nodded. "We are working with the State Housing Authority to appoint an independent oversight committee. In the meantime, all fines issued under the previous board's authority are frozen pending review." No new enforcement actions can be taken until the restructuring is complete. As the meeting ended, people gathered around me, not out of curiosity, out of gratitude. I just wanted to protect my business, but the ripple effect had unearthed something deeper. This wasn't about one fine anymore, it was about restoring trust. A few days later, the surprise came. A letter from the State Board of Residential Governance landed in my mailbox. It was an invitation, actually, a request for me to join the Oversight Committee formally. They wanted community members with technical and legal insight to assist in rewriting the HOA bylaws from the ground up, under state supervision. I didn't accept immediately. I needed to think. That night, I walked the neighborhood, not just my street but the side roads, cul-de-sacs, and back lanes that Deborah never bothered to patrol. I passed homes where porch lights were on for the first time in months. Kids playing in yards without fear of being written up for noise violations. People smiling at each other again. At the edge of the neighborhood, I found myself in front of the Gaineses' house. Their porch furniture was out again, this time with cushions. No one had touched it. That was when I knew. I showed up to the next restructuring meeting with a set of proposals. Not just legal tweaks, but structural changes. Community oversight panels, financial transparency dashboards, public monthly audits, and clear protections for home-based workers and remote businesses. Lynn, now acting board president, looked at the packet and raised an eyebrow. This is a full governance overhaul. It's overdue, I said. If we don't fix the system that let this happen, it'll happen again. She didn't hesitate. Then let's fix it. In the following weeks, the neighborhood transformed, not instantly, not perfectly, but piece by piece. The old board was formally dissolved. A temporary leadership group was installed with oversight from the Housing Authority. Deborah's accounts were frozen. Her arraignment was scheduled for the following month. Donnie flipped, agreeing to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. He admitted to falsifying invoices and laundering close to $50,000 through phantom repairs. The best part. The state filed a civil suit to recover embezzled funds, which would be redistributed back into the community budget. That meant long-delayed infrastructure projects, new park benches, updated sidewalks, storm drain repairs could finally be funded. And my business? Untouched. The citation was vacated, the record expunged. No apology from the HOA, of course, but I wasn't waiting for one. I had a team to lead, a community to rebuild, and a new role I hadn't expected. Watchdog. Because if there's one thing I learned from all this, it's that corruption doesn't start with criminal masterminds. It starts with unchecked power, lazy oversight, and silence. And I'd seen how fast that silence could be broken once someone decided enough was enough. The first subpoena arrived on a Thursday morning, just after sunrise. A courier in a windbreaker handed it to me with a nod and a clipboard. The document was thick, stamped, and addressed to my attorney, but it was clearly about me. The state was moving forward with formal charges against the former HOA board, including Deborah, and they needed me as a material witness. That same afternoon, I met Brianna in her office downtown. Her conference table was covered in case files, financial logs, and digital printouts. She barely looked up as I entered. "They're not just going after Deborah anymore," she said, pushing a binder across the table. "They've uncovered bank accounts tied to a shell corporation in Nevada. The treasurer set it up. Faircross Holdings was just one piece of it." I opened the binder. There were scanned wire transfers marked Maintenance Reserve, routing to an account under a different name, Blue Elm Realty, but the routing number matched the same bank used by Faircross. It was a deeper operation than we thought. They were laundering HOA funds through multiple fronts, I said. All under the guise of property acquisitions. And it gets worse, Brianna said. One of the flipped homes, it was sold to a private contractor that's now leasing it back to the city as transitional housing, at 3 times the fair market value. Taxpayer money is now wrapped up in this, I exhaled slowly. So we've gone from HOA corruption to municipal fraud. The DA's office is coordinating with the state attorney general. You're going to be called to testify at 2 separate hearings. That night, I pulled the shutters closed and locked my front door for the first time in years, not out of fear, just fatigue. I'd thought we were nearing the end. Instead, we'd uncovered a multi-pronged fraud scheme that stretched beyond our neighborhood. There was no telling how deep it went yet. The next week brought more subpoenas, this time for digital evidence. I worked with Marcus to extract time-stamped server logs, email exchanges, and access history from the HOA's internal system, the same one they never secured properly. It was all admissible now, especially since Deborah had never revoked my admin credentials. She'd been too confident to cover her tracks. When the first hearing convened, it was held in a downtown courtroom lined with oak paneling and flanked by news crews. Deborah stood beside her defense attorney, arms crossed, jaw tight. Her once polished demeanor was gone, replaced by something brittle and cornered. The prosecution began with a slideshow of financial discrepancies. Then came the testimony from homeowners, one by one. Tasha spoke about the fines that pushed her toward foreclosure. Mr. and Mrs. Gaines recounted the months of silence after they tried to appeal their penalties. Each voice chipped away at the illusion of authority Deborah had clung to. Then it was my turn. I stepped up to the stand, placed my hand over the Bible, and swore in. The prosecutor, a woman with silver-rimmed glasses and a voice like glass breaking, asked her first question. Mr. Jeffers, in your professional opinion as a network security expert, were the financial records submitted by the HOA board consistent with legitimate operations? No, I said clearly. They were structured to obscure fund flows. Payments were split across accounts to avoid detection thresholds. That's a tactic seen in money laundering, not routine maintenance expenses. Did you observe any efforts to conceal or destroy evidence? Yes. Several email chains were manually deleted outside the retention schedule. We recovered them from server backups. They included direct instructions from Vice President Tills to reroute proceeds from property sales into non-HOA affiliated accounts. Deborah didn't look at me once. Her attorney did, though his eyes narrowed as if trying to calculate just how much worse things were going to get. The following witnesses included a forensic accountant from the Housing Authority and a municipal auditor who confirmed the inflated sale of the transitional housing property. The courtroom murmured when the prosecutor revealed the inflated sale had generated over $300,000 in personal profits for the treasurer and Deborah's brother. The judge allowed the charges to be amended mid-hearing: conspiracy to defraud the public, wire fraud, and participation in an organized scheme to mislead state authorities. By the end of week 2, 3 of the former board members had accepted plea deals in exchange for full cooperation. That left Deborah and her brother, who refused to give an inch. The trial began in earnest a month later. This time, the jury was seated. Protests formed outside the courthouse, not against Deborah, but against the city's failure to vet its housing contracts. News stations replayed excerpts from my testimony. I started getting emails from people across the state, homeowners from other neighborhoods who'd experienced similar abuses, many of whom had been too scared or too isolated to fight back. Lynn and I worked with the Oversight Committee to create a resource hub, funded by the redistributed HOA funds recovered during the investigation. It offered legal templates, whistleblower protections, and a secure digital portal for anonymous complaints. Within 2 weeks, we'd received over 400 submissions. While Deborah's trial dragged on, our neighborhood continued healing. The new board, elected under the watchful eye of the Housing Authority, ran monthly meetings that were live-streamed and archived for transparency. The fines system was overhauled: no more arbitrary citations, no more weaponized enforcement. Then came verdict day. I wasn't in the courtroom. I was in the community center where residents had gathered to watch the live stream. The judge's voice echoed through the speakers, deliberate and calm. On count 1 racketeering, we find the defendant guilty. On count 2 wire fraud guilty. On count 3 conspiracy to defraud the public guilty. No one cheered. There was no applause, just a long, collective exhale. The judge sentenced Deborah to 8 years in state prison, with eligibility for parole after 5. Her brother received 6 years. The treasurer and the secretary, having cooperated fully, received probation and were barred from serving on any community board for life. After the sentencing, I stood at the back of the room while residents slowly filed out. Some stopped to shake my hand. Others left notes. One man handed me a folded piece of paper and said nothing. Later, when I opened it, I found a simple sentence written in neat cursive. "You reminded us we're allowed to say no." It stuck with me. 6 months later, the neighborhood held its first community block party in over a decade. No permits, no complaints, no citations. Just kids with chalk, potluck tables covered in homemade dishes, and a jazz trio made up of 3 retired teachers who'd lived here since the neighborhood broke ground. I brought a tray of empanadas from a place downtown. No one mentioned the trial. No one needed to. That chapter had closed. Under soft string lights and the hum of conversation, I sat with Lynn and Marcus near the fire pit. "You ever think you'd end up restoring an entire HOA?" Lynn asked, sipping lemonade. "Not in a million years," I said. "I just wanted to keep my business running." "Funny," Marcus said. "That's exactly what saved us if you hadn't had those logs." I didn't finish the sentence. We didn't need to. The fire crackled and someone started a slow clap that turned into a rhythm for the jazz trio. Life had returned not the way it was before, but better. The bylaws were rewritten, the budget was public, and the spirit of the neighborhood no longer lived in fear of pink slips and passive-aggressive threats. And as for me, I still ran my business from my home office. 47 employees strong, with 2 new hires from the neighborhood. Remote workstations, 0 commute, and every one of them covered under a corporate policy that now included a new clause: no HOA interference tolerated. I framed the original violation notice, the one Deborah had written in pink ink, and hung it on the wall of my office. Not as a trophy. As a reminder that even in the quietest suburban street, power can be abused and fought.